was today's video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, like for my mom.
Dude, it was a huge prank!
I know, but it's...
The mom of a young YouTube star, who is also her manager and sometimes appeared in her videos, will have to pay almost $2 million to other kids who appeared alongside her thanks to a lawsuit. We're getting the inside scoop on the recently settled case with the attorney for 11 plaintiffs, Matthew Sarelson. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So 11 teenagers and preteens sued the mom of popular content creator Piper Rockelle in 2022, claiming that Tiffany Smith not only sexually harassed and molested them, but didn't pay them for their participation in Piper's videos. Now, if you don't know who Piper Rockelle is, join the club. You got to be my age. I had no idea. Honestly, I'm not afraid to admit that, but I did research. We looked into her, and I can't believe I don't know who she is, because she is a YouTube megastar out in California who's especially popular with the younger generation. And remember for a while there when a lot of kids were going viral for making their own slime? Well, apparently that's how Piper got her start. She first appeared in a video in 2016 when she was just 9 years old, became a viral sensation basically overnight. She's now 17 years old. Her star has not dimmed. She has reportedly more than 12 million subscribers on YouTube, and of course, posts content on other social media platforms as well, like Instagram and TikTok. She apparently also uses Brand Army, which our understanding is described as the safe for work version of OnlyFans. Subscribers can pay for access to behind-the-scenes videos and other exclusive content. Now, much of Piper's content when she was younger was intended for an audience of her peers and other kids, but it seems that as she's entered her teenage years, her content started getting more adult. In fact, many of her Instagram photos depict her in arguably more sexualized scenarios. So needless to say, over the years, Piper's fame has meant major money for her and her manager, her mom, Tiffany Smith. And yes, the now 43-year-old is described as Piper's manager and producer for her YouTube channel. She was the first named defendant in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that legal guardians filed on behalf of 11 kids, all of whom had worked with Piper over the years and had been featured pretty heavily in her videos. The lawsuit, also named Piper Rockelle Inc. and Hunter Hill. According to the lawsuit, Hill is often depicted on Piper's channel as being her brother, but he's actually Smith's 25-year-old live-in boyfriend. He's also the primary director, editor, cinematographer for Piper's channel. The 11 plaintiffs, who were all at one point in time part of the Piper Squad, sued on the basis of several claims, including violation of common law rights of publicity, unjust enrichment, sexual battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The group included children ranging from ages 10 to 16, and with the exception of just two, all of the plaintiffs had their own separate channels that they were running and earning money from. And that's going to be important because I'll mention that in a minute. Now, the teens were originally seeking around $2 million each, so $22 million total. But now we have learned that the attorneys were able to work out a settlement of $1.85 million to be split amongst them. And I know I say this a lot, but look, it is our privilege to be able to bring you these kinds of stories. And I want to thank one of our great partners who helps make episodes like this possible, Upside. And Upside is actually the sponsor of today's Law&Crime YouTube Takeover. Now, Upside's awesome. It is a free app that helps you get cash back on gas, groceries, food, real cash back, money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. Super simple to use. For example, look here. I used Upside to find a gas station. I claimed an offer. I paid at the pump with my credit card, followed the steps in the app. I got cash back. Super simple. You can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code LCTakeover and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. So for this, I want to dive into the lawsuit and the results that were able to be negotiated. And with that, I want to bring in one of the attorneys for the plaintiffs, Matthew Sarelson. Matthew, thanks so much for coming here on Sidebar. Really appreciate you taking the time. So how are your clients feeling now that this case is over, that this settlement is official?
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, so the clients are actually ecstatic about the situation. They wanted to put this behind them. They weren't really ever doing this for the money. The money was sort of secondary. But they told everyone their story, very believable, credible stories. They've moved on. They're ready to start the next part of their life. They're late teenagers at this point. They've moved on.
Why settle now, and why settle for that amount? As I mentioned, if they were each seeking $2 million, you're looking at maybe $22 million. Someone could look at this and say, this seems like a low offer to settle on.
Yeah. So the way settlements come about, a defendant has to make an offer. Plaintiffs have to obviously accept the offer. There was some talk earlier in the case about this $22 million number. That was a pie in the sky number that was thrown out there. I'm not even sure how it ended up getting into the news or the press, but eventually it did make its way to the press. Why did the case settle for $1.85 million? That's a good question, and there's a couple of moving parts to how cases settle. One of them is insurance. The allegations in this case, because these were intentional tort claims, battery claims, sexual assault claims, there's no insurance for this. So this is all out-of-pocket money. And frankly, a lot of the plaintiffs just wanted to get past where we were. They wanted to not have to deal with a trial. We had a trial date coming up in December. It was going to be an 8 to 10 week trial. It's a very long time to put 11 kids in a courtroom with their moms and their doctors and testify again and again about what occurred. So it basically was, look, this was never about the money. 1.85 being paid by Tiffany, by the mom, fine. Let's take the money. Let's move on. They're all just more concentrated on future events.
I understand that. I get it. I do want to break down some of the specifics of the lawsuit.
Sure.
It's really interesting. So in the complaint, it says plaintiffs' collective efforts and contributions to Piper's YouTube channel as members of the squad were almost exclusively to the benefit of defendants, while to the physical, emotional, and financial detriment of plaintiffs. The complaint continues that plaintiffs were never compensated by defendants, despite the fact that their contributions on Piper's YouTube channel generated significant revenue for defendants, oftentimes upwards of several $100,000 per month. On the other hand, plaintiffs were usually charged several $100s per month by defendant Mr. Hill for various editing and cinematography services provided to plaintiffs for use of the creative content on their own respective YouTube channels. So, Matthew, what was their understanding about this relationship? Did they ever sign anything?
So after we filed suit, Tiffany actually came forward and said, there's talent releases for all of these kids, and therefore they're allowed to be on our set. And that was a real issue for us. We had to deal with the fact that, unbeknownst to us, the plaintiffs in this case did in fact sign talent releases. There was a question about their enforceability, but the defendants did in fact say, hey, we actually have the right to do all of this. Here's the contract that authorizes it. Their understanding was that they were making videos together, that they were going to essentially cross-promote. The way this works is one kid might have a YouTube channel that has, let's say, 1 million followers, and someone else might have a YouTube channel that has, let's say, 5 million followers. Piper's at the top. She's 10 million plus. She's enormous, right? She's the big person in this arena. And what happens is someone will say, you're going to be on my channel, I'm going to be on your channel. In theory, we cross-promote and our ratings all go up together. That's what everyone sort of understood would happen, and that they'd all be able to make money on it collectively. That's just not actually what happened. It was simply a Piper marketing pitch, if you will.
And when did they realize that something was wrong about this arrangement?
So about a year before we filed suit, so let me clarify. They were not all in cahoots together. They were not on set together. So they didn't really know that what was happening to them was happening to all the other kids.
Gotcha.
And of course, these kinds of things take time. The moms actually started talking to each other. And they would they'd go for coffee, and they'd say, hey, what's going on? And eventually they all discovered that the same thing was happening to all of them. And that's when they quit, and eventually they hired us.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask you about Smith's defense, because she did an interview with the Los Angeles Times in, I believe, December of 2022, and told them she never considered herself to be the plaintiff's employer. She says that she later got a work permit to work with minors. And I thought that was really interesting, that she didn't consider herself liable or responsible. What was your take on that?
Her interview with the LA Times was interesting, to say the least. Whether she thinks she was their employer is not the test. The question is, are you in actuality the employer? I can say all I want. I'm not your employer. If it looks like an employment relationship, it is by definition an employment relationship. Her other allegations of her other denials, you would expect her to deny everything, right? She's not going to say, yes, it's true, I touched these kids, obviously. So we never expected her to come forward and say, yes, this happened, this happened, this happened. I know there's been some allegation that she obtained a work permit, but that didn't happen when my kids were there. So whatever she's been doing since, look, I'm glad she's fixing the problem and she's restructuring how she does business. I can only tell you what happened when my kids were working there, and there was no work permit or anything of the sort.
And it's interesting when you mention the work permit or the work, because people sometimes look at the social media videos, they say, oh, what kind of job is this? But there is a lot of work that goes into this content. And actually in the complaint, you said collectively they spend thousands of hours of labor, nearly 800 collective appearances in Piper's 550 videos that were posted on this YouTube channel. And she had more than 8 million subscribers on YouTube, and that number has jumped to 12 million. So in a way, there's this idea of where these kids being exploited. There's another part of this lawsuit that I thought was really interesting. It goes, after plaintiffs eventually left the squad, defendants conspired amongst each other to intentionally interfere and sabotage plaintiffs' individual YouTube channels by driving subscribers and video views down. Now, Matthew, how did you allege that they did this?
We uncovered there's a certain number of ways you can access someone's YouTube channel. One of them is you have permission, and the defendants in this case, particularly Hunter, had certain credentials, login credentials, and things would happen to their accounts, making accounts private, making accounts public. Private accounts don't really get views, and you can't really monetize. You can't do anything with a private account. So there were videos and accounts that were made private when they were supposed to be made public. There were also tagging. So when you make a video, you tag certain things so that it comes up in an algorithm, right? You have to have the document say, this is what it's about. So you put in certain search criteria and it'll come back and it'll be a positive hit and it'll show up on your feed, right? So if you remove those or you mess with those hashtags or you mess with those keywords, it's going to alter your ability to find someone's account. And we had uncovered that these kinds of things had happened, and none of my clients did it. So somebody else must have made certain changes to their accounts. There were also very serious allegations that people sort of loyal, if that's the right word, loyal to Piper or in Piper's camp, were encouraging other people with large fan bases to stop either working with my kids or just untagging them, taking down their YouTube videos that were with them, whatnot. And so basically, if you have a whole bunch of kids who have a lot of power saying, stop working with those people, that's what was going on.
Weren't they? There was also the allegation that they were embedding your clients' videos on porn sites, and that there were, maybe it was bots or it was virtual assistants from other countries like India and Russia and Pakistan that were leaving derogatory comments on their videos. Can you expand upon those 2 points?
Yeah, so there's a way to increase your profile by having fake accounts. We call them bots. There's other kinds of fake accounts that you can use. Well, the opposite is true too. You could have bots that, for example, will flag content for violating the platform standard, right? So YouTube has certain community guidelines. Well, if YouTube operates under a 3-strike rule, where if you're found to violate their community guidelines three times, you're demonetized. It happens to people all the time. It's high-profile cases where this has happened. Well, you can create fake ones. You can have bots file these community guideline alerts, which eventually will impact the algorithm and when you can view someone's account. The porn issue is a little bit both stranger and worse. If you put in a number of my clients' names, or Piper's names for that matter, and you do a Google search, at some point down the page, Google doesn't do page 1, page 2 anymore. It's just a continuous scroll. But if you just continuously scroll down, at some point, relatively close to the top, you will have porn accounts that appear to be overseas accounts. We're not talking like Pornhub. It appears to be overseas weird names that have images of my clients or links to my clients' pages on YouTube or Instagram.
That's very shocking and disturbing, to say the least. You were able to tie it back to the defendants? Did they, or you try or allege that they did it? Did they deny it? Did they respond to those allegations?
Yeah, they deny it. Their general attitude was, this is something that is not unique to these particular plaintiffs that at some point, anyone who puts an image, if you or I put an image, for example, on the internet, at some point it can be manipulated, and whoever's doing it is doing it unrelated to the defendants. That was their claim.
I will tell you, some of the most shocking allegations in this lawsuit was about the sexual harassment and molestation, and I want to go into that. So the filing reads, during a filming session, Miss Smith, again, this is Piper's mom, was referring to another squad member when she told Sophia F., I wonder, since this squad member has freckles, whether he has a bunch of freckles on his penis. And plaintiffs would frequently hear Miss Smith refer to another squad member's penis as Dwayne the Rock Hard Johnson. And then later on in the complaint, it says, during a thumbnail photo shoot for a YouTube video, Ms. Smith demanded that plaintiff Sophia F. take her clothes off and ultimately made it appear that Sophia F. was fully naked. Ms. Smith also frequently told the male plaintiffs to take their shirts off for photos and videos because sex sells. Ms. Smith would often boast the plaintiffs and others about being the madam of YouTube and a pimp of YouTube, and that she makes kiddie porn. And she's also accused of rubbing the thighs of the young girls and reportedly moving her hand closer to their private areas until it was slapped away. And then the complaint also says that on numerous occasions, Ms. Smith would verbally harass, yell, and curse at plaintiffs if she felt they were doing something wrong in the videos, which would oftentimes cause plaintiffs to break down and cry, either on set or after they got home to their families. Matthew, this is really shocking allegations, disturbing claims. Again, going back to this, has Smith denied this? And how did you intend to prove that all of this happened at trial?
These are actually the easiest claims to prove, because all of my clients to a T have testified and would have testified if there was a trial that these things happened. The touching, the language, this was a sexually charged environment. You've seen these videos. These are, they're not porn videos, but they're definitely sexualized videos for sure. So this is a sexually charged environment. All of these comments about breasts, penises, butts, comments about the men and women, the boys and girls, these are kids, boys and girls going through puberty. All of my clients have testified repeatedly about these kinds of allegations. And frankly, I don't think we even scratched the surface. I think it probably went even further, because we were hearing from other witnesses who were not my clients about really sexualized environments. Obviously, Tiffany denies all this, and good for her. But ultimately, we were very confident that the 5 of our clients who had sexual battery claims, they would have ultimately prevailed.
Do you know if the authorities have gotten involved with this?
Every law enforcement agency you can think of has been contacted and has been in touch with our clients, from Department of Child and Families to the FBI. What's actually happening behind the scenes, they don't tell us. So I can't tell you what they're doing. I do know that we and our clients have been in touch with state, local, and federal law enforcement.
Gotcha. I understand. Wow. Now, there's another part of this, and it talks about the claims that Smith used the kids' images and their likeness and their names without their permission. And the complaint says that the names identify the personas of these kids. They have tremendous value. That value is worldwide. They've built up goodwill. They have rights. Can you explain that a little bit more to us?
Sure. It's a little bit like copyright. If I have a name or a face that has some value and you use it without my permission for commercial reasons, you are taking my name, image, or likeness, and you have to compensate me for that. You can't use Tom Cruise's image to promote a product without his permission. And obviously Tom Cruise would sue. Well, this is sort of no different. What made this really complicated was, after we filed suit, Tiffany and her lawyers had presented talent releases for all of our clients, all but one of our clients, and said, no, he had full permission to do this. And so then we had to have a real big fight as to the enforceability and the scope of these particular talent releases. So those were the claims that we filed, but those were ultimately, candidly, probably going to be the hardest to prove in light of the talent releases.
And by the way, Smith filed back. She countersued for $30 million. Accusing the mothers of these plaintiffs of trying to extort money by making what she said were false sexual abuse allegations. She ended up abandoning that lawsuit. What was your reaction to that?
I'm glad you're asking me that, because this part of the story doesn't get the attention it deserves. Tiffany Smith filed a completely frivolous lawsuit in Chicago, federal court. Why Chicago? No one knows. There's no connection to Chicago. She filed suit against the mothers of my clients, saying that they had engaged in a criminal conspiracy, which your viewers probably know as a RICO claim. She filed a RICO claim against my clients for $30 million. Well, first we pointed out that there was no connection to Chicago. So if you even want to think about pursuing this, you need to have it transferred. And the judge in Chicago actually said, this is nonsense. I have no idea why this is in my courtroom. It got kicked to Los Angeles federal court. When it was refiled in Los Angeles federal court, I had a heart-to-heart with the plaintiff's attorney in that case and said, this is frivolous. We're going to move for sanctions. We're going to get this dismissed. That lawsuit was predicated on a text exchange that we believe was entirely fabricated by either Smith or someone working on her behalf or in connection with her. There is a fabricated text message that, if you read it, suggests that my clients are doing something improper. The problem is it doesn't have a name or a timestamp. It's entirely unauthenticated, and no one knows where this came from. And the only people it could have come from, for reasons I could get into in depth, is Tiffany Smith and her side. So that counterclaim, if you want to call it a counterclaim, that lawsuit in Chicago was a entirely fabricated, frivolous RICO case predicated on fabricated evidence. They dismissed the case because we were going to destroy them.
Wow. I mean, that's such an interesting aspect to the story. And look, now that you've settled, a lot of these details will not come to light in the sense that they won't be put on they won't come into a courtroom. You won't hear the testimony. A lot of this evidence and this back and forth we won't see. I wanted to ask you and end on this point. I can understand that a lot of the details of the settlement are probably private. Having said that, the law firm that is representing Smith says that she's denied wrongdoing as part of the settlement terms, that she's still innocent. What's your takeaway from that?
Well, just to clarify, the settlement is not confidential at all. We intended the settlement to not be confidential because we wanted it to make it clear that my clients are free to talk about the case. They're free to talk about what happened. There's no confidentiality of any kind. In fact, it's a publicly filed document because it had to be approved by the kids. That's how we know that's how the case settled for $1.85 million. So no aspect of it is confidential. There's no NDA of any kind. I know Tiffany's lawyers. They're fine lawyers. I got along with them just fine. I'm sure that they deny all wrongdoing. I'm sure in the contract they continue to deny all wrongdoing. But in every settlement agreement you've ever seen, there's a statement that says we're denying all wrongdoing and we're making this settlement purely for business decisions. So whether they did something wrong or not, that's going to be in the eyes of the viewers, people listening and understanding what happened. So, I know they deny all wrongdoing, and I respect them for denying all wrongdoing, but we feel very confident where this case was headed if we had to go to trial.
Wow, what a story. Matthew Sarelson, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. Congratulations on settling this case, and we will see the next chapter of where this goes. But thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.